Cool. Hello, everyone. Can you see the right screen with collaborative learning? Good. I will stick with this mode. I don't want to switch to presentation mode because I want you to see how much is left, and maybe we will need to go back and forth. But I do want to introduce you to OpenHub and the model of OpenHub, which is collaborative learning. We are all about community and creating opportunities. Yes, in technology sector and using technology as a tool. So why we're all here? Because we're driven by technology. We're curious about it. We're using it already. And you see it's applicable to all industries and all kinds of functions. Python specifically, I would say, is really important because it's used for so many applications. Data-driven and data analytics, data analysis, whatever you see or hear data-related, it's definitely Python is behind it as a backend, as a machine learning, as artificial intelligence. So it can be backend for web development, it can be front end for data development, but that's why Python is really important, and that's what we want to explore today. I do want to say a few words about OpenHub itself, and that's what we do. Professional and educational programs and categories are here. We help with reskilling, upskilling. I heard someone is into career change. Welcome, we're happy to help you with that. You see some listed history here. We started in 2016, and now we have more than 1,000 people on our meetups. We started with web development bootcamp, and we have the best instructors, so I'm really happy about this. We continued with Google IT Support Professional Certificate. It's not OpenHub, it's Google, but we are facilitating and helping to get through this. And I believe it's one of the significant career change stepping stone courses which you have to take if you want to catch up with the speed. We have a lot of like courses, standalone courses, but boot camps are the main thing, which I'm really proud of. Data analytics bootcamp is our own online instructor-led. So welcome to explore this as well. And you see a few more listed here. What we want you to explore, this is your opportunity to join, right? And those are free. That's why you see and hear community co-learning and such, because all these coding clubs are free and we have them monthly. We're alternating the mode for coding clubs. Sometimes it's networking, sometimes it's code exploration or career exploration. Lately, we've been doing code wars to test your skills and just to do more problem solving, actually. If you want to join us, you can use Slack, meetup group, and all these links I will share later in the chat. And specifically today, we are doing Intro to Python. So we hope this will be kicking off the Python Study Jam, and you will stick with us and we will have this covered. I have a few slides why we do what we do. It's not necessary to go through them, but the idea is, you see, we are initiator of Hudson Valley Can Code. And these are all photos from the experience we have together. We have the purpose. Any community has a purpose. But our purpose is problem solving is a skill, and we want you to obtain as much as possible. We are here to help you, and problem solving is actually the pathway to entrepreneurship, to innovation, to positive thinking. And why Hudson Valley? Because we're here. It's so beautiful. We believe technology changed the world, but we also believe people, that's who drives it. So people first, technology second. a few slides about our previous programs. And we do believe all this coding, welcome to coding. All this coding is actually how our brain works. And you can see those are interrelated. And here we go with the chapters, and I don't want to talk about this yet, so I will stop sharing the screen right now. You got the idea about OpenHub. So welcome to OpenHub community. As soon as you are here, you are part of this community. Please make sure to stick with our meetup. It's our notification tool, one of many. We have Slack channel, and we do want you to network and learn from each other, because that's our digital pool, our old digital ocean. That's where we get our best mentors, and hopefully you will become one of those very soon. Saying that, one last thank you goes to our main sponsor, Newburgh Free Library. We're in the Hudson Valley, don't forget it. And Newburgh in the heart of the Hudson Valley. So we're excited about this, having Newburgh Library as our sponsor. And we're welcoming everyone to the Intro to Python with John Storman leading it tonight. And at the end of the class, we will announce our Study Jam kickoff. Sounds like a good plan?
Good. Thanks, Yulia.
John, floor is yours.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. So we're going to talk about Python. The first thing to talk about with Python is, what is it? Well, it's a programming language. What's great about Python is that it's written in English. And so all the commands are pretty easy to understand. If you go to C or C++ or Java even, there are a lot of commands that are a little more esoteric. And, you need a background in computer science to even understand why it's called that. Python has less of that, but there is some of it. So the first thing to consider about Python is that there are objects. And so I'm going to share my screen. Where am I? I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to bring up Replit. This is the screen I want. Okay, and so here you see I'm in my Replit. I have already logged in, and I've gotten to this place. And so if you go to replit.com, and I did put I'll put the link back into the chat again. So you see it, and so what I welcome you. Yulia did that. Thank you, Yulia. What I welcome you to do is to follow along. So I'm going to create a Python interface. So here it is. It's getting this funny name, Rowdy Compassionate Instances, and I'll make it public so that you can view it. I guess I can't do that. Well, here it is. And so when we open up Replit, we see 3 compartments. On this side are whatever files that we're using. This center thing is where we can write out code. We can write out multiple lines of code, and it will show up here on the right side where we can also write code. So I want to start talking about objects, and in Python, everything really is an object. It's that the object has, there's different types of objects. So the first object we have are integers. So that's a 23 is an object. 15 or 145 is an object. All of these things are objects, and they have the data type of an integer, which is basically a whole number. The next kind of data type is going to be what's called a floating point number, or a float in Python. So I could say, instead of 145, I could say 145.124. This is a different kind of number than 145, just because it's a number with a fraction. I could also write this like this, which is a float, but it's still a whole number. So floats incorporate whole numbers, but that's not all. That's not all there is to it. An int can have a decimal. It's not a fractional number. The third type of data type I want to mention is a string. So this is surrounded by quotes. And so you can see, we go hello world, and it's in quotes, double quotes, and the quotes need to match, and there we have it. Now, the first task of learning any language is being able to write hello world. And so I'm going to move over into middle where it says main.py. .py is the extension for a Python script. And so one of the things to know about Python is that it's an interpreted language. And we can compare that to a compiled language, which will takes whatever code that we write and then converts it into a machine language, which the machine itself can read, but we can't. Basically, for all intents and purposes, it's zeros and ones that we know that that's how computers work. So we're going to look at our first command, which is print. Every time you have a command or a function, it needs to be, you need to have parentheses. So you see it says print, and I have my cursor in between the parentheses. And then you notice, because I left my cursor there, that we get some information about what goes in those parentheses. We'll skip this for now in terms of that explanation, but let me I'm going to put a string in here. So I'm going to say hello world. And notice that when I typed the first quote, the second quote followed. And so, I could do that again. If I type an open paren, the closed paren is already there. And then when I hit the quote mark, it closes. And that's the nature of the IDE, or the Integrated Development Environment. And the Integrated Development Environment we're using right now is Replit. I will be doing some work in a different IDE, and we'll give you that information. But for right now, unless you have Python installed on your computer, it's not going to work. And so there's a little bit of a process to that.
Can we pause right here and just check if everyone is following along? If you're okay with Zoom settings, if you can see well on your screen, you can adjust your Zoom and make specific zoom in, zoom out functions. If you trouble with anything, just raise your hand or put this into the chat. Chat would be our signal that you want something to address.
I'm zooming my screen a little bit so you can see it better, if that helps you. All right, so what I'm going to do, so I've written these commands on the left side, and then all I do is I hit run, or I type Control Enter, and there it is. So we wrote hello world. I'd like everybody to do that, just because then there you are running in Python. Now I mentioned the interpreted part. The interpreter is a program that's running on your computer that does the work of the compiler. When you launch an application on a PC, for example, there's you'll see file named like word.exe, and the .exe extension indicates that it's a compiled program, as opposed to this, which is a script. And so the interpreter is running, in this case for Replit, it's running behind the scenes on the web page, or on the web server. And if you're using an IDE on your local computer, the interpreter is built into the IDE, which is running on your computer as well. All right. So if we have these different data types, and remember that if you put a pound sign, it means that the command won't be executed. It's a comment. So the data, one data type is an int, one data type is a float, one data type is a string. right? So we've got those. So here's an int. So the next thing I'll talk about, we can use, we can use the console as a calculator. So if I went 2 plus 3, we're going to get a result, 5. I could do, bigger numbers, obviously. Now, one of the things when you're writing a program, so we have this functionality, I could use this as a calculator. Obviously, if I have a lot of numbers, it's going to get old very quick in terms of having to type it all out, which is why we would write a script. So I could do the same kind of thing here, and I could say 2 plus 3, and that will return something. So if I run this, we're going to see the hello world. But, well, what happened with 2 plus 3? Well, we didn't give it a command. And so if I did this, print, so to spell it right, print 2 plus 3, Python is going to go, oh, it's going to resolve the 2 plus 3, and then it's going to pass whatever is there into the print function. And the print function says, oh, that's I'm going to print whatever is in these parentheses. So that's 5. All right. So we've gotten some functionality here. Notice because I've used 2 ints. So this is 1 int. Here's the other int. I then use this plus sign, which is called an operator. And there's multiple operators, and it's the standard ones you'd know about, which is, plus for, let me put in a hashtag for the quote. So plus is addition, minus is subtraction, an asterisk is multiplication, and then a slash is division, as we'd expect. There are other operators. For instance, if I do a double slash like that, it becomes whole number division. And let me just show you an example of that. So if I was to do 5 divided by 2, it returns a float, which is 2.5. So 5 divided by 2, we know is 2.5. However, if I use the whole number division, I'm only going to get 2. Because 5 divided by 2, if we want the whole number, it will only give us 2. And what it does, all it does is it lops off the decimal. So you have to be careful of this when you're using this kind of math. Just for fun, I show you 5 times 2 is 10. We know how plus and minus works. The next operator I want to show you is called modulo. Or you use a percent. So if I did 5 modulo 2, it's going to return the remainder. So 5 divided by 2 is 4. 5 divided by 2 is 2 with a remainder of 1. And that's where we get the remainder. Okay, so if we did this, 5 divided by 2, whole number, we get 2, and we can, and then we do have 5 mod 2, 5 modulo 2 gives us that remainder. Another operator that we have is to the power of, and we do that with multiple, with 2 asterisks. So if I did this 5 to the power of 2, this is going to be 25, 5 squared, and that's a very useful thing. There are lots of other operations that we can use. Bear with me 1 second. There are other operators, but we're not going to get into those right now. The only other thing I want to show you is parentheses, and parentheses act as an operator as well. So if I had something like print, and I go 5 plus 7 times 2 divided by 10. Well, what's that going to give us? Whoops. So we'll run it and see, because I don't know offhand. So that's 6.4. Well, why? Well, there's something called the order of precedence. So if you remember from elementary school, the idea of PEMDAS, maybe that's not elementary school, maybe that's high school, but PEMDAS stands for parentheses. So what's inside the parentheses goes first. E for exponent, M for multiplication, D for division, A for addition, and S for subtraction. So if we look at this expression, and this single line is an expression, we can see that the first thing that it's going to look at is the parentheses. So that's everything inside this print statement. The next one is exponent. We don't see that. Multiplication. So that's the next one. So 7 times 2 is 14. Then division. So 14 divided by 10 is 1.4. And then we multiply that by 5. So let me just see if I'm correct. 1.4 times 5. It's 7. That's not right. So let's see what's going on here. 5. So what we could do is we could put parentheses around some things. So I want to divide 2 by 10 before I multiply by 7. So if I run this again, we get 6.4. So that's the first thing. But I could also do this. I could say I want 7 times 2 to be done first, which may change our value. Let's see how that goes.
And James has a question.
Yes, go ahead. What's the question?
Okay. So this is, general math, and there are so many places where you can write code. I haven't ever used Replit. I use Visual Studio most of the time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sometimes I use CodePen. What I found is depending on what product you're using, your code will run or will not run. You said something about you have to set up Python outside of Replit to make it work.
Yeah, you need to. So Python is something that you install onto your computer. And so if you go to python.org, you can download Python. And it comes with an IDE called IDLE, IDLE, or Integrated Development Learning Environment, which will allow you to do some very basic, well, actually it does. IDLE is a perfectly good IDE. I will tell you about another one which I think is better, has more features in it, etc. So when it comes down to it, it's the version of Python that makes the difference.
So if you want to do something, for instance, in Visual Studio, when I'm using JavaScript, and if I write JavaScript in CodePen, for instance, I can write the code, see how to write something. But when I actually want to do something like create a website, I have to use Visual Studio to write the code to create the HTML.
Okay, fine.
So the same thing with Python. If you want to actually do something in Python, you have to use a code editor and not Replit.
Replit is just one code editor. You can make full programs in Replit, or you could use something local on your computer, which is a little easier because you can access files better. But Replit is really good for quick and dirty and seeing how things work, which is why I'm using it today. All right, let's move on. I hope that helps you, James.
And we will talk more about IDE.
Yeah.
Needed later today.
So, so we see that by adding on these parentheses, it may change the way this goes. So if I take out, I change this and I go, you know what, I want to do the addition first. We're going to get a different number. So we've been getting 6.4. Now it's 2.4. And it's because the addition went first. Okay. So one thing to know is that if you're working with equations or values, make sure that you understand the order of precedence, so that your calculations are going the way you want. Okay. So we've looked at basically numbers, but now I'm going to delete all this. And the next thing I wanted to talk about were variables. And so I said, you know, everything is an object. Well, we want to be able to reuse objects. If I type 5, that's an int, but it's a generic int in that sense. So I could create a variable that is basically a box to hold the value of those primitive data types. So I could say num1, and I use the equal sign. This is another operator, and this is called an assignment operator. So I can give num1, which is a variable, a value. So let's say I give it the value of 0. And so if I go print num1, that expression is going to evaluate itself. It goes, okay, what's num1? It looks up here. Num1 is equal to 0. Okay, good. I'm going to print 0. And there it is. Now, I could say num1, and then again, I'm going to assign something to it. And I could say num1 plus 1. And then I'll pull this, we'll print num1 again. Print num1. So num1 is 0 on line 1. We printed it to see what it was on line 2. We added a value of 1 to num1. So now num1 is equal to 1. And I could do this you know, as many times as I want. Num1 becomes this container that changes value depending on what's going on in the program. There's some rules about variables. So a variable can hold any kind of data point. You know, if I could call this, I could say string1 is equal to num1. And then if I print string1, if I print string1, it's going to be the same as whatever num1 was. And so at this point of our program, num1 has the value of 1. I could then do this. I could say string1, and now I'm using the same variable, and then I could make it a string. And then if I go print the same thing, I'm going to say print string1, and I run this, we're going to see we get this sentence. So this is a string. Again, another kind of data type.
That's where Python is comfortable, more comfortable than other languages. Easy to operate.
Some languages you have to declare a variable and say what kind of variable it is. Something to the effect of string1 is a string variable, and that the only value that you can put into that variable is a string. In Python, there's no restriction like that, which is one of the, as Julia said, one of the reasons it's really useful. The only rules about a variable name is that it must start with a letter or an underscore. It may contain letters, numbers, or underscores, but that's it. You know, you can't put an asterisk or any other character in there. The letters can be upper or lowercase. And then the last thing is that they can't be a keyword. And there, you know, Python has a bunch of keywords. Let's see if I can do this. So I'm going to do a statement called import. And what import does is it brings in other libraries. And so there's a library called keywords. It's keyword, I believe. And then I can print keyword dot KW list. I believe this will work. And yeah, and so here is what you see on the right side is a list of all the words you can't use. You know, false and true and none all mean something important in Python, so you can't use those words. And that's the nature of this. Okay,
And here's a question, why you sometimes typing in the middle? Sometimes you're typing in the black screen on the right.
Good question. So the black screen is an interactive console. The right, the middle, where it says main.py, this is a script. And so every time I click run, it will go through everything in the script. So it'll create a variable num1 and assign 0 to it. It'll print it. It'll increment it and print it again. Then it turns into a string. And so we'll get all this 0, 1, 1, the rain in Spain, every time I hit run. And so there it is. And I could do it again. I could do this ad nauseum. That's why we would do it differently.
And James is asking, can you create a functional website with Python?
The answer is yes. It's not, you would use it similar that you would, JavaScript's better for that because, you can actually incorporate JavaScript into your HTML page. But Python can easily generate HTML. There's a whole library called, it's not a library, excuse me, it's a framework called Django, which will create web pages. It'll create a whole website with functionality and all that. It's a little beyond what we're getting into today. So let's talk about functions. And we've looked at this function called print. This is a function. It's got, you can see this little pop-up, what we can do. So we can give it multiple values. We could say we want separators. We could have an and. I'm not going to go through all this because it's beyond what we're doing today. But every function is either defined or built in. And so in order to create a function, well, let's look at built-in functions first. So we have each data type has its own set of functions. So for example, if I say, I'm just going to use this variable called spam, and I'm going to give it a value of an int. So spam is equal to 124. Because it's an int, there are things that can go along with ints. So, I can print spam, right? That's easy. We run that. Here's spam, that 124. But I can also, I could do addition and subtraction. Because spam is holding an int right now, the spam is a named object, it's a named int. So if I did spam is equal to spam times 5. And then I go print spam again. We'll see what, this is now going to be 620, and you can see that. Now I could do that over here too. I could say spam is equal to 124. Nothing happens because I didn't say it. I could say print spam, and it will print it. I could say spam is equal to spam times 5. Again, nothing happened because we didn't ask for any output, but if I print spam again, we get that. So the right side is interactive. The middle is a script that will then, when I hit run, will actually do all those commands.
Just one note here. What we are doing right now, we are just playing to give you the idea about the syntax of the language. Mm-hmm. But later we'll switch into the meaningful programming. So we'll create the program. And for those of you who are trying to follow, and this probably sounds a little bit too fast, too quick, it's just playing. So feel free to play as much as you can, following along, but you can be following later because you will get the recording. Also, on your chat, there is 3 dots on your right. So you can always, I suggest at the end, to click those dots and say, save chat. We also plan to share the file, the final resulting file with you at the end of the class. So it gives you the idea of what we want to cover and how far we want to get. So hopefully we will get a fun program built tonight.
Yeah. Okay, the next, so we've been looking at data types. You know, we know about ints, we know about floats a little bit. I'll show you floats in a moment. And we've seen strings. Now, if I'm gonna, let me just delete all this. If I have a float, and so if I say 5, let's say I say my float, I'm giving it a variable name, and then I'm going to that's going to be equal to 5 divided by 3, right? We all know that's 2.5, or no, if I type it over here, if I go 5 divided by 3, so 1.667. So my float now holds this value. I could say I want to round this, so I could say my float dot round. And the dot operator says, oh, here is my object. I want to take this function round and apply it to it. So I'm going to put this in a print statement. And when we run this, we'll see that it didn't work. Let's see, has no round. Why is that? Wait a minute. I don't know why that didn't work. It should have. Let's try this. I'm going to say floor. This is another function. No, that's weird. Wait a minute. Let's just print my float.
And while John is fixing it, I suggest use community, ask questions, not me or John, ask questions in the chat and get those answered by community. Practice and ask yourself and just collaborate behind the stage, okay?
Yeah.
Somebody asked if spam is function or a variable. So what's
say it again, Yulia, they asked what?
Someone asked spam, which you used earlier, is it a function or a variable? And I suggest
spam is a variable.
And I suggest to have those questions answered by community in the chat, not by John. Make sense?
That's great, thank you.
Test yourself.
So if you know, by default, most things are variables. And a variable, again, is this container. And we can use that container and swap in and out, transform values using that. All right, I want to show you one other kind of data type, and we call this a list. And so it's a form of a collection. So I'm just going to call this my list. And I use the equals for an assignment operator. And then using square brackets, I'm going to put multiple objects in here. So I could say 1, that's our first item. 2 is our second item. 3 is our fourth, a third item. Then I could say spam in here. That's a string. I could put an equation. I could say 35 plus 75. That's going to turn into an int. I could say 72 divided by 4. That's also a value. Okay, so if I run that, now there's this thing. If I type over here my list, there it is. And so notice that, you know, when I printed out my list, which we got on the right side, 72 divided by 4 is 18, but there's a .0 on it. Well, why? Because this division is a float division, so it's automatically the result will be a float. Okay? So, but note that the list contains all these different items, and they're different kinds. We've got ints, 1, 2, 3. We've got a string spam. 35 plus 73 is another int, and then we have a float here. So a list is this just a collection of items. In some languages, not Python, you're only allowed to have one type of data in an array. This is an array. And so we've set this up. Python allows you to have as many values as you want. I could even put another list in here. Now the list has some built-in functions, as I was talking about before. So the first one, let's say I want to find out how long is my list. I can use a function called len, and then all I do is I pass in the variable of my list, and we'll put that in a print so we can see it. And so if I run this, there are 6 items in my list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I want to access something from that list, I can go print, and then I put in my list. And then using a square bracket, I can ask what element do I want. So maybe I want the second element. I'm sorry, I want the 4th element, which is spam. The way we count in Python is we start at 0. So number 1, if we're looking at the items in my list, 1 is 0. So 0, if I print my list 0, I'm going to get number 1. If I want the 4th item, that's going to be number 3. So if I do this again, we're seeing what that item is. And I can put in whatever number I want. Now, there's 6 items. So what if I put in 6? I'm going to get an error. And here's the error. Now, errors are really useful. When sometimes you look at this, you go, hey, what is that? Well, if we look at it, it says traceback, most recent call last. And so this is the most recent thing. It's looking, we see that line 8 of our file main.py, and that's where we are. In module print my list 6, and so here's the command that we're passing. And it says index error, list index out of range, because in this list, the range is 0 to 5. 0, 1, 0. Let's see if I can do this. I'm sorry. Ugh. So no, this one is 0. This one is 1. This one is 2. This is 3. This is 4. This is 5. Okay. We could
And it
also
always start with 0.
Pardon?
And it always starts with 0 in Python.
It always starts with 0. We could also count backwards. So -1 is going to be the first one on the end. So if I run this, it's going to be 18.0, which is 72 divided by 4. All right. Another thing that we can do with our list is we could change what's in it. I could say my list, and I'm going to say number 2. So we're accessing the 3rd item, and I'm going to give it a new value. Okay, and then if so I'm saying, okay, take the index number 2 and turn it from what it was to this value, and I print my list again and run this. Now, index 2 now says lumberjacks. So we have this ability to create this collection of items and manipulate it. There's a bunch of commands that let us do that. Another thing we could do is I could say my list dot append, and then I could add in something. I'm going to put in false. Remember that false is a keyword because another data type is a Boolean, which is going to be either true or false. And so if I print my list again and I run this, now our list is longer, and you can see on the right it says false. All right? Okay, so let me shift gears. I'm going to go over to my IDE now. This IDE is called PyCharm. And let's look at a real program. Okay, let me just run this program, and then we'll step through it and see what it does. So,
and can you make it bigger a little bit?
Yeah, let me see. Hold on one second. I think I can.
And while he's doing that, this is the demo, perfect demo of another IDE. I think Maria was asking about how IDE looks like. This is different IDE. We're switching gears.
I don't know how to make it bigger. I'm sorry, wait, let's see.
That's okay.
I don't know how to make it
Everyone can make it bigger in view options, zoom view options.
Yeah, there is a way to do it, but it's a little more complicated in the IDE, and I apologize for that. But if we look at this, you can see what you should care about is what's in here. Okay, these are the commands that run this. But if we look down here, we see the program running. So this adds any two numbers. So the first number I'm going to add is 25. The second number I'm going to add is 35. Now, one thing when you're writing a computer program, you want to consider what it's going to come out as. So we know that this is going to be 60, right? So now it processes, the total is 60. Would you like to add more numbers? I'm going to say yes, and I'll do it one more time. I give it a number. Let's say we'll keep it really simple. Here's 2, and then I'm going to add 20 to it, and I get 22. So pretty straightforward. It's very, it's clear what's going on. But let's look at the code. Is there any way to do this? Can I do this? Okay. So, so we've seen these print statements. So line 9 and 10, it prints an empty line, and then it says this program adds any two numbers. And we see that here, right? Then it says time.sleep, and this is just a function to have it pause. It prints another line. It says print let's get started, and we see that. We see the line, we see let's started, and then then there's this function called add them. Remember that this hash sign is a comment. So this, we want to write stuff into our code so we know what's going on. And we have a variable here, num1. It's taking whatever input comes out of this prompt, okay, and returns it as a string. And because we need it as a float to do the addition, that's why it looks like this. So again, time sleep. We enter the first number, and convert it to a float. We enter the second number, convert it to a float. We print out some things, and then it does the calculation. So num1 is one variable, num2 is the other variable, and num3 is going to be the answer. And that's where you can see what's going on here. Very simple. We're taking num1 and adding it to num2 to get num3. We convert num3 to a float, and then we print it. And then at the end, we say, okay, hey, you want to do it more? And if the answer is yes, we do it again. We run atom here. And if it's no, it prints some other stuff. So this is just a quick and dirty program that does something similar, that does something simple. Let me show you one other thing. This is a pretty fun game. This is Hangman. And we all know how Hangman goes. So if I run this, it starts with, so, if we look at down at the bottom, we have to guess a letter. It's a 3-letter word, pretty simple. So if I just I type a letter, let's say E, it's not in there. And you can see there's something starting to build. And it's building I'm going to type the letter O. It's building a gallows. So how about A? Aha, well, there's something. I've got an A. How about an N? That's good. So let's try a T. Nope. How about a D? Yes, so I won. Okay, simple. It's a simple game, but let's look at how that's constructed. I'm going to go through this quickly, and I will give you this file so you can play with. At the top, we have this list called gallows. And remember that a list can hold whatever. And it's holding these little text images to make the gibbet. Okay, and so, we say, let's play Hangman. We wait for we wait for a short time. And then we give some more instructions. Okay, and so if we scroll down, in order to do Hangman, we need a word list. And so we create this is an empty list that we're going to add to. So we open up a file, and this file words.txt has about 1,000 words in it. It's located on my machine. I'll give you that file too. And then we say for X in Word file, which means for every line, we want to basically just add it to the word list. So this dot append, we looked at very quickly, and it says take X, and with each X, strip off any white space. And then what it does is it says, okay, I want a word, and it pulls it randomly out of a word list. And these are commands we didn't talk about, but this is something else. This, again, we're just scratching the surface. So it picks a word, and then it says start guessing. And so we now have this empty variable called guesses that holds, right now it holds nothing. We give the user 7 turns, and while turns are greater than 0, and this is a loop, and the way the while loop works is it does whatever this condition is, turns is greater than 0, and then follows. So we make a counter called another variable called 0, and then we say for every letter in Word, if the letter is in guesses, and guesses is this empty string, print out the character. Or if it's not there, print out an asterisk, star. Print a star, okay? And then every time that we type a letter and it's not in the word, it increments failed. So when failed gets to 7, it stops. And if failed is equal to 0, then we win. And it says here, congratulations, you guessed the secret word. It was, and then it adds on the word, okay? And so that's basically how this program works. It's very simple in terms of when you read it. Maybe writing it, it's a little more difficult, but not terrible. Okay.
Any questions? I'm sharing files.
I know I'm just running through this very quickly. Are there any questions so far? All right. The last few minutes, I want to just talk about this book.
And before the book. So what's happening right now? I'm sharing the 2 files with you in the chat. You can download those. First file called words, the one John was using. And second file is the coding itself, the script itself. And when John was sharing his screen, can you get the screen back for a sec?
Yes. Yeah.
The same one.
Hang on.
Just to give you the orientation about IDE, on the left side, there were files. There were many files. And thank you for cheat sheet, John. I think it's not the one.
So here are the files.
It's not the one screen, not the screen you want to share.
Oh, you want
your IDE, your pie chart.
Yeah, here. Okay. Is that better?
Nope.
All right, let's try again. I'm sharing screen 2. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. On the left, you can see all files. And at the bottom, you can see words, txt.txt. You can see hangman.py. Those 2 files we are sharing with you. And hangman is, as a file, is also open at the top, because on the horizontal line, yes, you can switch between files here as well. Same for console. Pardon my accent.
So I did share a cheat sheet with you in the chat, and this is just a quick and dirty cheat sheet about how Python works. What I want to do, though, is I want to look at with you, do a quick look at automate the boring stuff. And so that's what we see here.
Yep.
Yulia, did you put that link in the chat?
Not yet, I will.
Okay, good. So this is a book by a guy named Al Swigert, and it's a really good book. We'll take you through it. And what we're going to do for the next 3 months is we're going to have a what we're calling a study jam, and I'm going to come online, and we'll sort of go through. I'm not going to, we're not going through the whole book. I can't do very much in the short time that we have. However, I'll be able to answer questions, and we can try examples and do those kinds of things for this book. Now, this website, the whole thing is here. If I click on this link, automate the boring stuff, we can see here we are. So the first month between now and the beginning of April, if you want to play with us, you should go through chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, so that we're doing the first 6 chapters. Now this is the book, and you can, if I click on this, it will take us there. Here it is, and I can scroll through it,
and it's free, open source book, thanks God. You can buy it on paper, but it's so lovely to have it online, so it's available for everyone.
Yeah, I do actually have the book in hand, because that's how I like to read things. But it will go through all those different things. So here we are, lists. And list is considered to be a data type. It'll explain what I talked about with lists. Here you see, spam has cat, bat, rat, and elephant, and these are the elements, and here is the way to access each one of those elements, 0 through 3. And so, as a group, we're going to go through this. Most of it is going to be on, for you to do the work, and will be, basically guides and also, your professors, if you will, but you have to do the work. This is not really a class. And so we're setting up these study jams just to have, to give you an opportunity to get some advice as you go through. If you get stuck on anything, if you get confused on anything, then, use that time. Now, we're giving that away. It's not our book. We're sharing some information. But we are, somewhat, we're a business, so we do want to offer the opportunity for some increased interaction. So for what did we say, Yulia?
Can I share the screen now?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Oof. I have.
Can you make that big? So the first month, between now and April 6th, we're expecting you, if you're going to participate with us, to go through these chapters.
Am I sharing right screen?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. April 6th, we're going to have office hours, free office hours, and we're going to look at these 6 chapters. So we have an opportunity, if you want, for $35, you can come to these bi-weekly sessions to go more in depth, where, we're doing these extra works. You could also, because we're having 6 sessions, you could buy all 6 and get a little discount. So $35 a session or $175 for all 3 of them. This is very cheap as far as I'm concerned. And it's a good way to push you along, for you to push yourself along to learn what you need to learn. Yulia, how would they sign up for this?
We will do couple things. First, I need to share all the links, right, for those who are following on mobile phones. So if you signed up with the meetup.com, so you will see this as a first comment in the meetup.com under this event, specifically event. And also I will email you all the links and link to the files, because I was asked if files will be shared with attendees. Yes, recording and files. I will make sure you will have the access to those. We're actually so excited to study it with you together. And we're excited to offer office hours for free. So that's why with all who registered, I will follow up with email because I received your email. Do you object? Is it okay? By email and by the link under Meetup event. I will have it as a first comment. You can come back to this event on meetup.com and find this there if my email for some reason will follow on spam or such. We will stay in chat for sure, in touch. We will stay in touch for sure. That's why I will use a few more minutes after this for networking, and I will put LinkedIn and other links into the chat as well. But here I want to say thank you, huge thank you to John for mentoring this class, and thank you for offering this study jam, because nothing is better than follow up with hands-on, doing something together. And also welcome to our coding clubs, monthly coding clubs. It's another free resource to practice. And since we are going through the Python right now, we will practice more Python, and we will use another cool platform for that called Code Wars. So you
Code
have
Wars just will give you little programming challenges, and so you're welcome to come to any coding club we have. If you don't understand what's going on, you will eventually, and sometimes it's useful just to immerse yourself in the conversation without knowing what's going on. I've learned a huge amount. I've learned huge amounts that way because you will catch on as we go through it.
awesome. I'm putting
that's great, Julia. Thank you.
Yeah, the schedule into the chat, and here I am stopping recording.
I was just going through the chats, which I wasn't looking at before. Jennifer, I want to thank you for everything you wrote. It was all really helpful.
And also Lauren did some good job.
Yeah.
Commenting it.
I want to just say thanks for your attention tonight. I know we really we covered a lot of ground really quickly, but that this is the nature of this particular thing. Although, when we look more closely in the study jams and the office hours, we'll get more going on. But you'll need to do most of the work yourself.
Right, that's what Study Jam stands for. And thank you, John, once again for this free orientation class and demo. Thank you for all resources you prepared, and thank you, our sponsor, Newburgh Free Library. Welcome to the Hudson Valley.
Bye, everybody.